Good afternoon, Year 6. I hope you're well and have had a good day so far. Today, within our history session, we're kind of collecting together the knowledge we've gathered so far about World War One, and we're thinking what we can recall about the conflict. To be successful today, you will need to. Sorry, guys, it's come up on the screen there. You'll need to remember the key events from the First World War, and we're going to try and devise some mnemonics to support our recall of those facts. You're going to revisit the causes of the war, so we're going to look at why the war happened. We're going to identify how the battles were fought, so the kind of methodology within those battles, especially the Battle of the Somme, which is the battle we've looked at particularly from 1916. And we're going to think then about which elements of the war, so which parts of the war kind of reside in your head, which, based on our 4 lessons so far and your knowledge previously, what stays in your head about the war. That'll be interesting to see what has affected you when reading about the war so far. So, as I say, I thought a device that we could try and use today would be to develop some mnemonics like we've done with our maths and other subjects, and sometimes you do in science and other subjects, to recall some facts about World War One. Okay, so you're going to be mnemonic makers, and I have checked my fellow mnemonics. Okay, so if we look here at the catalyst for the start of the First World War was the assassination of a man named Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So if you remember, in Sarajevo, an organisation called the Black Hand decided to kill this man who was about to, I think, he was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Killed him and his wife, and because they killed him, other countries became unhappy about that, and therefore countries were attacked. And because they were allied together, there was the Triple Entente with France, Britain, and Russia. They had to fight against the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austro-Hungary, and eventually Italy. Okay? And because that event happened, that was the catalyst that said that the event which started the problem off. So I've highlighted some letters here in red, because with your mnemonic, you won't always need every word highlighted. Sometimes you do. So with our maths, we use divide by denominator, multiply by numerator. When we use that as a mnemonic for fractions of amount, we do need all 6 letters highlighted. But here we need too many letters. But here we've got C, S, F, W, W, A, F, F. So what we've got is catalyst, start of First World War, assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Okay, so what we've got then is those letters listed beneath. Okay, and you can see those letters listed down there. And then I was trying to be creative. I'm sure you're going to be much better at this than me. I thought, what do I think? Okay, so I've got cats sprint faster when wolves are after felines food. Best I could do. Honest, my cat was in the room and he insisted that we did it about him. Now, can you think of a better one for catalyst start, First World War, assassination, Archduke Franz Ferdinand? And then can you think of some other ones for other events? So the 2 main alliances being Britain, France, Russia, and Germany and Austro-Hungary. You've got to pick which words you want to highlight. So I've done red for the first one. Which words are you going to highlight on your sheet? The 2 fronts, Eastern Front between Germany, Austro-Hungary, Romania, and Russia, and the Western Front between France, Britain, and Germany. So you're going to list those front names. How are you going to do your mnemonic there? Battle of the Somme, key battle, one that we've looked at. So in northern France, more than 1 million people died. 141 days it lasted. July, ending in 1916 in November. And then new ways of fighting, war in the air, tanks, trench and naval warfare, ships such as dreadnoughts, new weapons, artillery, flamethrowers, machine guns, chemical weapons, lots of letters to highlight, and then try and think of a mnemonic. Because these details are really important in understanding what happened in the war, and these mnemonics that you're going to write today are ways of remembering them. I wouldn't make a mnemonic more than about 10 words long for each of these facts, because it becomes too long to remember. Okay, but seven or 8 letters is probably optimum, probably the best. Okay, right, guys. Second skill, we've got to think about which of these words mean which thing. So we've got allies, assassination, trench warfare, no man's land, campaign, go over the top, Zeppelin, and sorry guys, you can't see all of these on the screen, and artillery. And underneath you, have got some different meanings. Okay, and on your sheet you will have these meanings. And what I'd like you to think about is which word means which definition. So you look at the definitions at the bottom of the screen based on your knowledge of the language so far. And we've looked at these words within our first 4 lessons. And once you've looked at these words, you try and match the definition to the meaning, and then complete that in your tablet, in your table, please. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to think then about what we can recall. Okay, so we've got some key issues. If you want to make a note now, the first World War One, make a note on a scrap piece of paper. You don't need to keep this. Just see if at the end of this, it's the same 5 things that you think are the key events, key facts that stay with you in your head. Now, sometimes the key facts are most important. They're just the ones that resonate most closely with you, the ones that you think are most important when you, as a person. So, for example, if you found that a soldier or a leader had the same name as you, that might resonate more strongly with you than the number of people who died in a particular battle. Or if you found out that the youngest person who died in a battle was the same age as you, that might link you more closely to the type of weaponry that they developed. So sometimes the things that link to you are the things that stay with you. If you could make a note now, pause and write 5 things that you think you can remember about World War One now, or 5 things that you think are most important about World War One now. Okay. Then in 5, 4, so pause, 3, 2, 1. We'll come back now and we'll try and recall some of these facts, and then we'll see which ones stay with you at the end. It started with Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Here he is. He was due to become the king of Austro-Hungary. Okay, he never got to be the king due to the fact he was assassinated to kill this group called the Black Hand from Serbia. There were other events which led to that battle as well, but this was the catalyst. So it's almost like if we've got this pen is going to fall off probably off this one. So the orange pen is going to fall off eventually off the orange one. Okay, it's staying there at the moment. It's just about there at the moment. There isn't a war at the moment, but then eventually somebody comes along and assassinates. And because that assassination's happened, this pen is now on its own, or other pens might attack it. Basically, that was always going to fall off. The war was always going to start, but something started it. The catalyst here was the Prigozhin. It's always likely to be something that happened, but there needed to be this final catalyst. The different causes then that had happened before. So Africa had been colonized. These countries had made empires. So France, Italy, Germany, and Spain, and you can see the parts of the map that they'd taken over within Africa. Europe itself, so the continent of Europe, which is to the north of Africa, was relatively peaceful. There weren't many wars there. But what had happened was lots of the countries were getting richer. Okay? And if you remember Victoria and her reign in Britain, we as a country had become very rich through our empire. And the empire involved trade, but it also involved colonizing, so taking countries and taking the wealth of countries for ourselves. The only 2 countries within Africa that were free that we can see there were Ethiopia and Liberia. And eventually both of those, well, certainly Ethiopia became under the Italian reign. Liberia actually is quite an interesting country, which we should talk about at some point in the future. You should discuss that over yourself. Okay, it's got an interesting history itself. But these countries then in Africa have been taken over, and because of these, many of the countries in Europe were rich. However, Germany didn't have as much area, as much wealth from colonizing as other countries. So eventually, they decided they'd try and get in charge of other countries. Okay, so what they did was they got a bigger army so they could start to take over these other countries, maybe taking them from the other European powers such as England and Italy and France that already had them. And because they got lots of weaponry, the country's got lots of weaponry because we don't like you having guns if we haven't got guns, is the idea. So it was this build-up of weaponry. Okay, so gradually, the armies of Europe were getting stronger because essentially, in the first place, because Germany wanted to have colonies like England, Italy, and France had. Now, because these countries were getting weaponry, other countries wanted to get weaponry as well. And then we've got these agreements where they say, well, hang on a sec, if Germany attacks us, we'll defend together. So France, Russia, and Britain made this triple entente. And Germany and Austro-Hungary, which is kind of an alliance of Austro-Hungary, which was an empire back then, they decided that if Britain, France, and Russia attacked Germany and Hungary and Austria, then they'd defend. And the triple entente of France, Russia, and Britain said they'd defend. Okay, so we've got these countries who are agreeing against each other. Now, and then these alliances are now meaning that one attack will cause lots of countries to be involved in a war because they've made an agreement that they'll defend each other. In our class, it's almost like if Chloe said that she was going to attack, let's say Chiron, but Chiron got on his side Hania and Talia, and they'd agreed that they were going to defend Chiron because he needs that defended. Okay, then Chloe might attack, and those guys would come back, but Chloe on her side has got Hader, has got Bailey, and they're going to defend Chloe. And suddenly, then we've got this idea that 6 people are involved in a fight rather than just Chloe and Chiron. Okay, and I'm sure Chloe and Chiron would never have a fight. But if they did, they'd be helped out by their ally. So remember, we've got this idea. So the armies were being visited by the rulers, and that's sometimes what happens even now, where armies are visited by important people. Archduke Ferdinand was visiting these armies, and then he was killed during this visit. And because they'd made an agreement to defend him, as soon as the Serbians were attacked in revenge for this, then it precipitated this battle between other countries. Okay, because of this Triple Entente alliance, Britain had to enter the war when France was invaded by the Germans. So Germany invented France, and therefore Britain had to launch to defend France. Okay, and that was the beginning of the battle at the beginning of the war in 1914. In 1916, then, the war was still going on. It had been going on for nearly 2 years. And then there was the Battle of the Somme. Okay, the French army had lost lots of soldiers in Verdun, and the British army were going to help the French against the Germans. Lots of people from other countries were fighting on the side of the British as well. There were people from Ireland, Newfoundland, which is now Canada, South Africa, and India. So lots of people from around our historical empire. Remember those trenches where they fought? Okay, they're full of water. Okay, they had to live there. The rats lived there with them. They were horrible places, and they needed to stay down because as soon as they put their heads above the parapet, they would be shot at. And that was when you went over the top. It was you were climbing over the top of the trench, and you were going over the top. And as soon as you went over the top, you were at risk of being shot at by the machine guns which had been developed. The British had a cunning plan. Their plan was to fire at the German lines and then gradually run, shoot at them and then run towards them and then fight them with their bayonets. Unfortunately, though, there's a problem with it. Others, because obviously the Germans had the guns to shoot at them. But some of them thought it was a really good idea. Okay, so some senior leaders like Douglas Haig thought it was a good idea, and that meant lots of soldiers died. Now, in the Somme, then the Germans had these military these machine guns which they shot at the British as they ran at them, and so the British threw these shells at them, more than a million at them, more than 1.7 million. 20,000 soldiers were shot on the first day. Okay, the casualties, those soldiers who were shot or killed. Because they needed more soldiers, Lord Kitchener launched this army campaign to try and persuade people to become soldiers, and he called them Lord Kitchener's Army. And this is the armchair patriots Wilfred Owen talked about in Quorum S. He said it was noble to die for your country, and that's that sergeant major who we've recently experienced within Private Peaceful. The weapons were getting stronger and stronger, better and better. The tanks still weren't very good. Only 15 of the 36 tanks which were used on the first day in the Somme actually made it to where they were supposed to. Lots of them broke down. However, they had new weapons that killed better. Machine guns, mines, gas, killing people. At the end of the Somme, then, the Germans eventually were captured. 7,000 were captured. But it had taken more than 1 million people for this battle to finish. Okay, so 1 million people in total. Now, some facts then we've looked at. What I'd like you to do is think about which 5 stay with you. So I've written one here, so I will forever recall that more than 1 million people died at the Battle of the Somme. I spelled battle incorrectly. And then I said the reason it stayed with me, because that's 4,000 times the number of people at Brookvale that died. What I'd like you to do then is complete your mnemonics, your definitions of those language points, and finally, 5 facts that stay with you about World War One. I look forward to reading those, Year 6. I want to see what you've taken in about the war. Thank you for your attention today. See you soon. Bye-bye.